Hello and welcome everyone. This is Mike. I'm the founder and CEO of SweetDash. This video is just one in a series of many videos that will be highlighting both new and current features. Be sure that you're subscribed on YouTube and following us on all social media to get the latest videos and updates about new and existing features. Alright, so let's get started. Today, let's talk about the dynamic logic engine. And let's look here. And we'll just kind of go over a very basic flowchart of what we expect from this functionality. Okay. So essentially, the engine is like a bot, is a good way to think about it, like a robot, a virtual employee who is constantly looking for scenarios in your data or in a date-based relationship. And when, the old when-then equation, so when a certain condition is evaluated as true, then we're going to fire an auto template. And this auto template is something that you pre-configure, okay? Well, you pre-configure all of this, but an auto template can be comprised of multiple automations. So let's look at what this looks like in the platform. So in the platform, under the automations menu, you'll find auto templates, and here is where you can configure, you can create automation sets that together the set is referred to as an auto template. They can be comprised of multiple automations that can do things like add, remove circles. They can, let's just look together so that if someone is looking at this for the first time, they can kind of get an idea. So all of these actions and all of these automations are possible. And these are cross-platform automations, some of them quite complex, some of them quite not complex, quite simple, such as sending an email. Okay? So any number of these in one single stack of automations can be combined into what we call an automations template or an auto template. And that is available for you to fire on demand, right? You can set automations anywhere in the platform to be fired by things like the paying of an invoice or the approval of an estimate. But at human decision points, what we call checkpoints, you may want to create an auto template for scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, and then your human decision maker will decide, okay, we've reached this place where I have to decide what scenario we're looking at here. They decide on B, they go from the contact and they trigger auto template B, and boom, that can be comprised of emails that go out, invoices that go out, proposals that go out. It doesn't matter, that's completely up to you. But multiple things happen in one go. Data is inserted, dynamic data is inserted. So this can save you literally 20, 30 minutes, maybe even more for kicking that process into the next stage, right? Because it's already pre-configured. You trigger that auto template and it can take care of a dozen different things in one go. All appropriate, all white label, all populated with the data from that target. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But what might be even cooler is, what if you had a robot that could sit and watch for certain scenarios at all times, and when you had that scenario come back as true, as we saw in the diagram, then it would fire this auto template, this one that you created. So now you're designing an automation, and you're designing the conditions that it gets fired under. Okay, so let's look, before we look at the actual settings, let's look at how they are configured. Okay, so let me do a little zooming, a little moving here. Okay, so the first one that you might understand, that's probably most understandable or most easily associated, would be something like this one. If a custom field value equals, that's not what I want to see. Let's do this one. Okay. If a custom field value podcast production credits equals 0, then we want to fire this invoice generator. And this is related to, let me see if I can get to the right place here. Yeah. Okay, so in our last episode, or our last recording session here, we talked about this example where you would have a podcast production service that would have 5 credits where you can create a credit system, and then that each time this one using the one-click trigger, automation trigger, each time you click this button, then it would trigger an auto template, which in this case triggers all the project and the emails and all those things, and it decrements the custom field by 1. So now you see this is provided by a dynamic data custom field. And so now we're down to 4, okay? So now we have 4 episode credits remaining, and this works until I get down to 0, and then it removes the button. But what I want is, when it gets to 0, equals 0, I want to apply using this template. I'm going to apply on-demand invoice generator, and I'm going to give 7 credits. This one's called 7 credit charge up for the podcast production service, and this has an amount associated with it. And on that generator level, I have an automation specified that when the invoice that's generated from this generator is paid, then it will add, in this case, 7 credits to the target's value for that particular custom field, which would then give me back to 5 or 7 or whatever I decide. I can charge back up their credits based on the payment of that custom field. Okay? So now I have what I'm after, which is after that 5 gets counted down to 0 in this case, this logic trigger is going to be is watching, and as soon as that happens, it says, okay, the value of this custom field is equal to 0. That returns true. That means I'm going to fire this auto template, which in this case contains this on-demand invoice generator. All right, so that's pretty clear. So it works like this. If custom field conditions return true, then fire auto template. Okay? So custom field value 1, and I use this less than, equal to, or greater than X. Custom field value 2, Y. Custom value, they can be stacked. All right? And you can use and or any. And what does that mean? If you use multiple custom fields and set an associated value that you're looking for, an associated operator, if you use and in these cases, then it will require all of them to be true. If you use any, it means that if any one of them are true. Okay? So let's look at that here. So if I have this one is if custom field value equals, and if I add a new if, I'll get another value, but see how it's any or all. Okay? So now if I can say all, I can set another custom field value, and then for this to return true, this one has to be true and this one has to be true. But if I select any, if either of them are true, it will fire the auto template. Okay? All right. So that is, I think that's clear. Let's go back. Yes. Okay. So now we're looking at this situation for if custom field conditions. All right. That's clear. All right. Let's go down. No, let's go to a different place. I want to show a different scenario. So that's something you might see traditionally. You might understand custom field logic, and that's kind of you'll see that in many places. All right, this custom field logic. What you might not see in many places is this next option, which is if today's date equals. Tammy has a question. Tammy, a VIP. Can you stack and have and connecting to and then any for the last? Stack and have connecting to and then any for the last. Oh, you're saying and any. Let me go back to that, Tammy. Let me go back to that, okay? Let me stick right here. But I understand what you mean now. Okay, if today's date equals. Okay, so this one is quite powerful because what it's going to do is allow you to say every single day, if today's date, which is November 9th currently, equals to a specific date. Now, this is quite simple. If you said, okay, if today's date equals November 9th, now what? This returns true, right? Boom, fire this thing. Or what's more cool from an automation standpoint, I keep saying cool, but it is pretty cool. This is kind of a lot of neat stuff here. So if today's date equals the value of a custom field, right? Say, how about this one? Approximate day you'd like us to begin. Now remember that a custom field, when it's created, has a unique value for each one of your contacts, okay? So this logic trigger is looking currently at all clients and prospects, although you can limit this to only certain circles. So you can make trigger logic rules for certain circles only, or even down to the certain clients only, right? So you can make a rule for a specific client and say, only for this client, here's the rule. We wouldn't normally recommend that because we're always looking to create a bigger type of set of rules so that your automations are easier to make, control, and maintain. But in this case, we're just going to look at all clients and prospects. So every day, this rule is going to check and see if any of your clients or prospects, if their custom field date is this custom field date is equal to November 9th. And if that's true for, say, 4 of them, it's going to fire this auto template with 4 of them as the target. So each one of them will become the target in this automation, and that will happen for those 4 people. If it's an email to them, okay, yes. If it's a invoice to be generated, 4 invoices will be generated, each one uniquely assigned. Just same as if it was one person who was identified, and all the same actions that happened to that one person would happen uniquely for all 4 or all 10 or all 100 of the people who return true for this rule, which would be the value of their custom field. This custom field, approximate day you'd like us to begin, or tax portal last updated, doesn't matter. You can choose it here. This must be a date type custom field, keep in mind. If the value is equal to November 9th, currently today, then this will fire for them. All right? So that's pretty neat, right? And think about in terms of, it could be anything. It could be an event that's unique to them. It could be a next date of service. It could be a projected project creation or project delivery date. It could be anything in your business, but what you're basically doing is looking out into the future, typically, always, of course, and saying, okay, if when this date arrives, I want you to do this thing for that person. Okay. But what if you wanted to say, okay, but yes, I want to do it on that date, but actually I don't want to do it on that date that they enter into a form. This is a good example, approximate date you'd like us to begin. So maybe this becomes the project creation or the project start date. Maybe you don't want to do it directly on that day. Maybe you want to look 5 days before then, right? So in this case, you would give you the option to make a calculated date, which in this case, this would fire on November 4th. Because in this person's, say in my profile, for example, this date equals November 9th, but this would actually fire and return true on November 4th, this logic. So this allows you to say, if your client says, here's the date that I want to a certain thing to happen. Okay, great. They give you that in a form. And remember, we're trying to make everything around an automation. So you're not going to be entering this date. You want to create this rule to handle 1,000 people a week. So if 1,000 people a week are entering a date into a form, you're not going to be able to control that or manually deal with that. That's fine, because this is what will do that. This will read that date constantly and look for this scenario to become true, and then fire this auto template based on the scenario returning true. Okay. So let's go here and just kind of look at this on a diagram level. If the current date is a specific date, a custom field date, or a calculated date, any one of these, you have these 3 options. And if that returns true, then we'll fire the auto template for all the targets. We'll apply, I guess is maybe another word, all the auto template to all the targets for which that returns true. Okay? All right, so this is a little bit more powerful than you would typically see, because this gives you a whole nother set of conditions. And here's what's interesting. It doesn't end here. So you might be saying, oh, but what about if I need to fire this auto template on a recurring basis? Well, that's possible too, because we have another condition. Let me see if I can. I want to go here and here and here. Now let's do it. Let's just do it here. Trigger logic. There's another condition that's the alternative to if, and that is every. All right. So you can say if, and go the path that we just described and looked at, the two paths, custom field value and today's date equals, or you can say every. And when you say every, now you're creating a recurring schedule. So you can say every day, week, month, or year, and then you will need to specify a start date. That's really typical in any recurring, and that can be today for you. It doesn't matter. But you'll be able to set the start date. So if you want to do it on the 1st of every month, you'll do something like this, December 1st. And then can set an end method, which is never expires, or on date, a specific date here, coming soon or coming later. In future iterations, we'll provide you the ability to set a custom field date here. So you can actually specify based on custom field data when this would end. But what's cool about this every is you can stack this in addition to if conditional logic for custom fields. Now you'll notice that the if option for today's date is missing, and that's logically necessary because it's not possible to combine if today's date logic with every month logic, right? Because this is always going to be true. Once this starts rolling every month starting on December 1st, it needs to do it every month on December 1st. That's going to be the schedule. It doesn't need to look at is today's date X or Y or Z. So that just doesn't logically make sense. So you'll notice that you can't do that, and there's a good reason for that. But you can combine it with custom field values that like we looked at before. Any one of these. And it can be more than just number custom fields. You can be answer custom fields, like single line text and date. It can be numbers. It can be anything you need to create your equations that you're looking for. And if they return true, again, we're going to be firing the automation defined here. Okay, so that's the if current date is. This one is every. Okay. So every day, week, month, year, start on date, and then you have the choice for never expires or end date, and if it returns true, fire auto template. Okay, so what I wanted to say is understand that if you use every, you can only use every. You don't have to use a combination. So you can use every as a recurring engine to fire auto templates, and that's it. It doesn't have to be associated with some value of custom field. It doesn't have to be that. So conditional logic, as you might understand it, is kind of out the door. And what we're basically doing is saying, okay, in this mode, for this particular auto template, we're in a recurring mode only. In this case, all I'm saying is every month, fire this for every client, right? Or if you have a payroll circle, for example, if you're a CPA, you might have a payroll circle that you might say every week or every month, or I think probably later we would add something like about every 2 weeks or something like that, give you more options on the recurring schedule. But all I'm saying here is every month, fire this auto template for these people. Okay, and this is a limit. Basically, you're specifying who will receive this. The default is all clients and prospects. You just remove that, add more. You can add multiple circles here. You can create whatever kind of stack. You can even do company circles here. So see how company circles are here? Company circles means this is applying to every contact who's associated with this company, the primary and all associated contacts. So if you wanted to create some kind of action for each company or a company specifically, you could set the company every month do this, for that other company every month do that, and you create rules. You can create 100 of these rules, 1,000 of these rules if you have the need, and they will all sit there and scan and look and send based on and trigger based on your parameters. So this is the every condition. This is what we talked about as far as the recurring, and that's what I was saying before, is that you can set up a completely recurring engine that has no conditional logic at all. Okay, and that was something I was showing you here. So all clients and prospects every month, start on, end on, and then you do not need to have a conditional statement here related to custom fields. So this is a very simple recurring logic. It has nothing to do with conditional custom fields returning true. But just to reinforce as well, again, you can say on every month, if this custom field is equal to XYZ, then you can put this filter here, and you can add multiples, right? Any. And this answers the question that was asked earlier. We do not have the way now to combine all and any, because that introduces a lot of extra complexity, and it was decided to leave that for the moment. That makes the logic a lot more difficult if you want to combine any and all, because then you have groups. You'll have to group them, and I forget who asked that. I think maybe Julia. If you have to group them, then you will have to group them together into an all group and an any. All the all statements would have to be correct in one place, and then you'd have to have some additional any groups, and it becomes pretty complicated at that point. There's ways to break it, a lot of ways to break it, and you have to build in safeguards against that and validations. So this makes it much more straightforward, and 99% of people will not have a need for that kind of advanced logic. And what you can do also, Julia, is just create multiple rules, right? So if you have a condition, if a situation like that, you can create up any number of these auto templates with their own associated logic. So in that case, when you need it, you can create a trigger logic for the any conditions and for the all conditions, and try to make them work in the same way. The auto templates might be identical in that case, but that's the way I would handle it at this point. Tim asked the magic question that everybody always wants to know, is about the birthday, right? So if today's date equals custom field date, client's birthday, we'll say this is, right? Tim, this is the big question. This is apparently what the feature was designed to do. It'll do many powerful things, but the birthday, yes, we're going to bring in the next iteration, is already planned and already underway, to bring an every year option. Okay, so you would specify here, instead of a custom field date, you would say, yes, a custom field date, but then there would be an every year custom field date parentheses every year. Then you would choose the custom field, and then the month and date would be populated in the sense that you would kind of leave the year out. So we would look at the month and date, and then every year it would fire. So in that case, yes, you would be able to do it like this. I wanted to go over one more thing. Let's look, make sure we've covered everything. So we've covered the basics. We've covered the custom field conditions. And I'm going to come back here. This is what I want to cover. If current date is, this is really neat, especially with the calculated date and the custom field dates, and the every condition, which gives you recurring. These two are grouped together because they can be used together. The if custom field conditions and the every conditions can be used together. If you use this if statement, this if condition of current date, it can only be used alone. Okay? And we explained the reason behind that. But let's look now at the custom field conditions, at this one, okay? So if, for example, favorite color, if favorite color equals blue, then fire an auto template. Okay, well, if somebody changes their favorite color to blue, we fire the auto template. But do we fire it again? When do we fire it again? When do we not fire it again? Do we fire it one time and never again? What if they change it to blue, from blue to green, and then back to blue? What if they go from blue to red to green to purple and then back to blue? Do we fire it again? That's the question. So how do we specify when this true condition should fire again? Should it fire consecutively over and over and over again? I don't think so. Nobody really wants that. So the current logic is working like this. Let's look together. Okay, let's just have this as our starting condition, and some of you will really enjoy this. Some of you will run away screaming from a diagram like this, but I think it's pretty cool. All right, so starting condition, false return. Let's assume that there's no value for a specific client, right? They have no value because they haven't completed the form yet, right? And so we have this logic condition that's being watched by the logic engine. The value changes. This is when they complete the form. Every time the custom field value changes, any custom field that is referenced in a logic engine condition, we go and we look, we check it against the logic and say, okay, is it true or false? Not individually, but if there's multiple conditions, we check all the conditions. Yeah, I know. Tim says he's screaming already, trying to keep it down for the rest of us. But it's pretty simple. When the favorite color is changed in this case, we check it. We check against the conditions in that logic engine and decide do the conditions return true or false. If they return false, then we do nothing, of course, right? So it's not true, so there's nothing to do. We don't fire the auto template, and we go back to here. We're back at false condition. Okay, let's call this false condition. It's a little bit more clear. Okay. If it returns true, as you know, we would fire the auto template, and then what we would do is we'd set a block. So in our database, we set a flag, it's called, and we basically add a block and we say, do not fire this auto template, even if the condition returns true. Okay. What I'm saying basically here is that if it's true and true, then and true again, so consecutive trues, we don't fire. So by adding this block, next time it returns true, unless it was false in between, we're going to block it. But let me show you how it works. So true, let's go to this condition. So now we're over here. We had a true value, and we have this block, and we're saying don't fire it unless we remove the block. So now we see the value has changed again. Okay, we check it again. Okay, is it true or false now? And if it returns true, then we do nothing because it was true before, right? So if they submit another form somewhere, or a separate form, or staff submit goes through and it stays green, favorite color green. I can't remember what I used for an example before. But anyway, if the color is the same as it was submitted or changed, but it returns the same, then we're going to do nothing because we're not going to fire the auto template again because it's the same exact answer that was there before. And we're not going to do that. And we're going to leave the block in place. But if they change the value, say, to red, we see the value has changed. We check it against true or false. Oh, now it's false. Okay, so now this doesn't match what my parameters are. Now it's false. We're still not going to fire the auto template, but what we are going to do is remove the block. So basically by removing the block, we'll say, okay, now let's follow this path, and we return to here, back to the starting condition. So now it's false. There is no block, and we wait to see. Every time it's changed, we check true or false, and we're now back in the loop. Okay, so this is what we call the beginning of the loop right here in some logic. Okay, so now every time the value is changed, true or false check. If it's false, we go back up here. This is a loop until it turns true. When it's true, then we come here and we start this loop, and we loop this until we get a false result, then we come back to here and we loop here, right? So essentially that's how this works. So you'll know what to expect. Your auto templates will fire they will fire when the condition returns true. Then they will not fire again unless that condition moves to false and then comes back to true. But when that happens, when it comes back to true, it will fire again. Okay, I think that's fairly clearly said. So as a quick example, let's look and then I'll answer questions. All right, here's a quick example. Reset podcast production credits. Okay, this is the one we looked at before. And it is podcast production credits equals 0. Okay, so in this example, we're using this one-click automation trigger to decrement this number of credits down to 0, right? So it's going from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 eventually, and then finally to 0. When it gets down to 0, after they've fired the auto template the prescribed number of times, that's what we're looking for. That's when we want to trigger. Okay, let's go back. So it equals 0. But once it equals 0 and it fires, it won't fire again until we change this away from 0. So it could be anything, into 1, into 2, into -1, it could be anything. And then it will be prepared to fire again the next time it sees that this is equal to 0. So in this case, in this logic, it equals 0. It sends this on-demand invoice generator. When it's paid, we're going to charge back up credits. So basically, we're going to go from 0 up to 5, and then they'll use 5 more, back to 0, fire this auto template. They pay the invoice, goes back up to 5, and every time it'll fire because the logic, when we change from 0 to 5, the check will happen. This check will happen when we go from 0 to 5, and it'll say, okay, now it's false because now the value is 5, not 0. Then we'll return to the top of the loop here and start back over 5, 4, 3, 2, 0. 0 is true. Boom, here. We're at 0. We do nothing. And then only until it changes away from 0, then we loop back to the beginning. All right, so that's how that logic works. I know that's a little geeky. Sorry about that. Okay. Christopher says, are these triggers limited to custom fields within forms? I'm looking to potentially say fire a text message if certain conditions are met on a work request. So Chris, that's exactly where this will be extended, and we will iterate in places with additional logic arguments to make them possible, using from all over the platform, even from projects, from like you say, from work requests, from affiliations with circles. If they're in this circle, that circle, but not that circle, there's really no limit to what we could build as far as logic here now. So this is the base framework, and this will satisfy the needs of many people. But we'll continue to hear and listen for the kind of things you guys are asking for. There are already a set of ideas that will be part of a second iteration. But for sure, that we plan for this dynamic logic engine to be a real workhorse in your business, to allow you to take any number of conditions and combine them on a recurring basis, right? So that you can build an ongoing logic that is automated, that works no matter what, and works on in a reliable way to recognize scenarios and date-based triggers to launch automations for you. So yeah, it's going to be really powerful. But yes, firing a text message is 100% doable. That's one of the automations that's available. So if you have the Twilio integration worked out, you can send an SMS just like this, right? So then the only challenge in your request is the trigger, right? And one of the first places that we'll extend this is right now the trigger custom field values are CRM contact custom fields. But the first place to extend, and already, of course, on our radar, is to extend these options to company custom fields, work request custom fields, project custom fields, etc., staff custom fields. Eventually the idea is to bring all of these tools into play for your internal staff as well. A lot of our customers are small, medium businesses, so staff is less important as far as all the functionality over clients, prospects. But yes, as we move, the idea is really to extend as many of these things, as many of these automations and onboarding options to staff as well, so that you can automate staff onboarding, staff training, staff everything, HR, all that. But good question, Chris. Yep, exactly. Yes, sir. Okay, I think that pretty well describes the feature and goes over all the need-to-know items for this first iteration. All right, I hope that was helpful, everyone. Good questions. I think that can be the end of the session. Thanks for your time. See you in the next one.